Hi, my name is Joel Pilger.
And I'm Tim Thompson from RevThink.
And you're listening to the Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions. And you're listening to the Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production, filmmaking, television, and music industries. We got a good one today, guys. Tim Thompson and Joel Pilger from RevThink join us to talk about how to build a better and more successful production company. We can all use that. The Go Creative Show is supported by Rule Boston Camera, newsshooter.com, hedge.video, shutterstock.com, and premiumbeat.com. Premium, royalty-free music, and sounds. I am so excited for this episode. This is like therapy for production. This is what this episode is. It's therapy for production, because what Tim Thompson and Joel Pilger do with RevThink is they help people make their production companies more successful. They give you the tools to make sure that you're putting out there into the production universe what you want in return. What do I mean by that? Well, here's the thing. If you don't understand who you are as a creative, it's really difficult to find companies to pay you to do anything. Because if you don't know who you are, they don't know who they're hiring and why they're hiring, right? It's all about figuring out who you are as a business, who you are as a creative, and who are the people that are going to hire you to do these things, and then finding where they are and how to get their attention. There's many steps to this process of building a production company, and no matter how successful you are, this episode is going to really help you hone your tools or hone your skills, I should say, and develop new tools to help you be more successful. There's so much information here, so much. And it couldn't have come at a better time for me personally with everything that's going on with BC Media Productions. We are expanding, we're adding people, we're growing, and there's a lot happening here. So this is like the perfect time for me, and I hope it's the perfect time for you too. It's a great show, a lot of honesty, a lot of real talk about the industry, and you will learn a lot. I can guarantee you that. But before we get there, let's talk about Rule Boston Camera. The thing I love most about Rule Boston Camera, well, first of all, you can buy equipment, you can rent equipment, you can certainly learn. They have all their learning events and workshops on their website at rule.com. But what I like most about it is that I get attentive service. And this is service that, it's well beyond my expectations. And I expect a lot when I'm purchasing and renting a lot of production equipment, because the production industry is mission critical. I mean, let's be honest here. Nobody wants to reshoot. You don't want to reshoot. Your clients certainly don't want to reshoot. And you also want to make sure that you are on time, you are on budget with your productions. And a lot of that comes down to the equipment that you're using, right? Especially if you're using a piece of equipment you don't necessarily know that well, Rule's got your back. You rent from Rule. You have expert advice and counsel in pre-production when you're figuring out what equipment should I buy or rent. You get technical guidance throughout the whole process. There's been times where I've called them from the set and been like, I can't get this thing to work, or I don't know how to get this setting to work. And more often than not, they're able to answer you immediately because these guys understand the equipment. They understand it. They know everything about this stuff. It's pretty remarkable. They have a world-class inventory of rental gear, cameras, audio, lighting, grip stuff, all the motion rigs, Movies, Black Arms, Easy Rigs, all that. They have everything that you want, and they know everything about all of these things. It's pretty incredible. They get a great selection of lenses, too, and they've been in business for over 35 years, right? So they certainly know what they're talking about over there. But it's really the service, knowing that Rule's got my back. That's why I keep going back to rent and to buy. So check them out. Rule Boston Camera at rule.com, RULE.com, and buy some stuff, rent some stuff, and go check out their new location. It is phenomenal. Let's talk about hedge.video. I use Hedge all the time. I mean, I'm constantly using this app because it's super easy. There's no learning curve, which is great for me. I hate having to learn new things. But it's really, really fast. It's faster than the Finder, and it gives me the peace of mind that the Finder just doesn't give me. It's like when I transfer over media cards on a shoot day or whatever like that, I'm doing my own DIT a lot of the time. So when I get cards from my camera operators and audio people, it's like, I want to make sure that everything is backed up correctly. And I want to make sure it's backed up fast, right? When you use Hedge, you have that peace of mind. You can import multiple sources, send it to multiple destinations, which is huge for me because I want to make sure I have 2 copies of everything before I give those media cards back to the operators. Import multiple sources, send it to multiple destinations. And if you get the Hedge Connect app for iOS, you get a notification when the transfer is done. So you have high-speed transfer. You have the peace of mind knowing it's done correctly. You can send it to multiple destinations, and you get a notification when it's done. It's like, this is the perfect app. So you go to hedge.video/Go Creative Show, and you get a 20% discount off the regular price. The regular price is $99. You get a 20% discount by going to hedge.video/Go Creative Show. And even though there is a free version, and you should certainly check it out if you want to, I strongly encourage, get the full version because it unlocks all the capabilities. And if you're listening to this show, you're a professional, or at the very least an enthusiast, and you deserve the best to make sure your media is backed up correctly. Hedge.video/Go Creative Show. All right, it's time for our spotlight, RevThink. It's time to build a better production company, don't you think? It's time. And this is what RevThink does. No matter how successful you are, there's always room for improvement. And for those of you who are aspiring to build your own production company, you want to make sure that the foundation is strong. RevThink has worked with more than 100 firms across the world to help them build more successful production companies. And today, they work for you. So I'm here with Tim Thompson and Joel Pilger, partners at RevThink, and so excited to talk to you guys. I know that our audience here at Go Creative Show are going to be hanging on every word you say today because so much information is about to come out in the next hour, and I really appreciate your time.
Hey, no pressure, right?
I know, right?
Happy to be here.
Well, first of all, for those people that are saying, what the hell is RevThink? What do you say to them? What is it?
Well, I would tell them it's a creative entrepreneurship consultancy, which means we come alongside owners of creative businesses, and that's mostly studios, it's production companies, it's agencies, to help their businesses thrive.
And so this is mostly so people that are going to RevThink are going there for what reason? Like, who is RevThink for?
RevThink's for owners. It's for business owners. It's really who we focus on as we come alongside creative entrepreneurs. So those are those special individuals out there that were crazy enough to launch off on their own, start their own creative business. And of course, after a few years and some success, they realize, man, running a business is every bit as hard, if not harder, than being a great creative.
Now, Tim, I know that this is kind of your baby. You're the founder of it, and Joel's certainly involved. But when you started RevThink, what was your goal? Like, why did this happen?
Well, I actually started in this industry in the late 90s. I was one of the original people at the founding of a company called Imaginary Forces in Los Angeles. And I had this unique opportunity to be a producer of many of the world's greatest title sequences and visual effects spots, and then, of course, motion graphics work that we did there. So early on, I became a fan of this industry. So at the beginning of RevThink, I really just wanted to continue doing what I did, which was problem solving, helping the people that do the creative work best, and then do what I could to support them. So some of our first clients were just friends of mine who had started motion design companies and needed help with one problem or another. But after a while, I started realizing that many of the patterns that people were living out in their business created a need for different business practices and opportunities. So I started RevThink really to start implementing and putting those practices in place.
I think the big thing, and I know for me, creative people, they want to grow into business because they want to do something of their own. You know, they're entrepreneurs, but they're more on the creative side than the actual entrepreneur side or the business side. I mean, that's how it is for me. I always feel overwhelmed by the business side, but perfectly comfortable in the creative side. And you kind of have to blend the two together to make anything work. What are you finding are some of the big issues that people have when they're trying to turn their creative, endeavors into a business?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm like, how much time do we have? Yeah, because I think, really the problem you described, I would say there's actually 7. There's 7 problems, because running a successful creative business, there's really 7 areas, or we call them ingredients, that it takes to truly be successful, especially over the long term. So I'm also smiling, Ben, because I'm like, yeah, your problem is so common. It's absolutely the same story that we hear over and over again. And, I lived it. I ran my own production company and agency for 20 years, and I know exactly what you're describing. And it's a very familiar story.
And what are those 7? I mean, can we talk about them? I'm curious to see, because these will probably resonate with people as we go through it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, we're talking about what we call the 7 ingredients of a creative firm. And these will sound familiar to you, right? You start a business as a creative, and that's one of the ingredients. You do the work. Yeah. And most people think, wow, I'm really great at this work. I should go start my own business. And then you start to realize, wow, there's production, there's marketing, there's sales, there's finance, there's operations, and then there's this other weird category called entrepreneurship. And those 7 really, as you grow and evolve through the years, are required. They're really not optional. If you're going to be successful and not drive yourself crazy, be overworked and stressed out, underappreciated, all these kinds of things, that you really have to get serious about mastering each one of these ingredients. And ultimately, you're going to delegate them. But along the way, you have to really wrestle with all of these things. And you thought it was just about, hey, if I'm a great creative, the rest is going to just take care of itself, right? It's all about the work.
That really is the way that people think, especially when they're first starting out. That's how I thought. You think, I'm doing good work. People will notice it. Things will be fine. And then you realize that a lot of people are doing great work, and it's like, how does yours, even if your work stands out, there's so much more that goes into securing these jobs. It's just incredible.
And I think instinctively, we first start thinking the better our creative work is, the better our company will be. And the reality is the work or the effort it takes to build a creative project and to do creative work really is a different part of the brain than the analytical, long-term thinking it takes to run a business. So the part of your brain, the part that you depend on every single day to be a professional creative, really is impulsive and innovative. It's sharp and it wants to think about new things. And then business takes a long-term planning and strategy. It takes systems and routines and maintaining those. So the two are somewhat in conflict just inside of the creative entrepreneur themselves. So often what we try to do is come alongside them and then teach them how to operate within systems, build routines within their company so that they can depend on something else besides their own personal nature and instinct to run their business. And here's the reality is, like, we believe, what I think sets RevThink apart from the very beginning is that I wasn't a business manager or a CPA or something professional in the business world. Mm-hmm. I was a producer. And part of that meant I wanted the creative to always win. So RevThink, even in the way we do things now, the idea is that the creative needs to win. The creative needs to come first. And then the systems, routines, operations need to support that creative process.
What do you think are the more common mistakes that people make when they're starting their agencies out?
One of the most common mistakes, I would say, in starting the business is that the first person they depend on to work with is the person sitting next to them. So I know too many business owners, and Joel can probably testify to this in his own process, too many business owners that partner up with the person that had the desk next to them when they got their first job. And the two of them got into business together. And then the reality is that the ideas or what they wanted out of their business as they start maturing within their own business somewhat start to separate. And the two individuals have different needs. But that's probably the most common starting is who you choose to start with.
So you're saying like two people working at an ad agency or production company, and just having a common goal while they're there, going off to do their own thing, suddenly find out that their goals aren't the same.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of people start business in an impulsive way. They have some basically freelance project that is more than they could take on. So they grab someone out of convenience, a producer that they know that they're working with, or another animator they're working with, another designer they're working with, and say, hey, you want to be my partner? Let's start a business and we can do this one project. And then over the years, they start to realize or determine that really two creatives don't make good business partners, because in reality, it's like building a house with two bricklayers. Like it doesn't really, it's two people of the same specialty in the same field. So that's just, in starting, I find, for some of the first questions we get about a company, often has to do with partnership or new beginnings. An individual who starts their own business might have different problems, often have to do with just why they started, what they thought was unique about them as they got started. Because again, I think in this industry, most people think the creative is what sets them apart. So they think if they just do better creative than the other guy, then they're going to, they're going to be successful in business.
I'll just add to that I think sort of that's step one is a challenge. And then step two is this, I think, misconception that, hey, we just landed a great project and another great project and another great project. This is the foundation of a business. But actually, a series of projects isn't a business. It's a very different thing. And so there's a misunderstanding that, well, hey, if we're doing a series of projects, this is a business, right? And then you start to wake up to these other ingredients that we talked about, and you realize, wow, there are needs and issues and challenges that transcend any one project. They transcend many, many projects. And those issues and items have to be dealt with and figured out, and ideally even mastered.
And what are some of those issues that commonly come up? So I'm thinking, like, I'm sort of speaking for our audience here, but I think that a lot of the people listening have a similar situation where it's like they are, a camera operator or they're a writer or something. And they, like you said, end up developing a good list of clients. And there's a whole bunch of projects coming on. They start to think of themselves as a company, but it really is only them and maybe some freelancers that they hire.
We would call that person the solopreneur.
Okay. So
there's a person who's a freelancer who says, hey, I'm going to start my own business. What they really mean is I'm going to operate under a name. I'm going to, create an LLC or something, and I'm going to run the dollars through this business. It's really a solopreneur, which is fine. I think it's actually better if you know that's your goal. My goal is to just live life on my own terms as a freelancer. It's very different than building a business. If you want to build a business, I think the most common challenges are you have to break these myths. And I talk about these all the time of you start a business and you think it's all about the work. You think if we just provide great service, if we just get our name out there, if we charge, good prices, we'll be successful. And so you have to overcome these common myths. And the things that I think really start to address these areas is realizing, okay, it's not really as simple as about the work. It's actually, we need better clients. We need clients who can give us really interesting problems and challenges to solve. But how do you get them? Well, that takes great outreach. You got to be really great at starting conversations and connecting and interacting with people on that level. Well, how do you do that? Well, that takes great positioning, meaning you got to stand for something that's unique and remarkable. And then, of course, well, how do you do that? And that's built on what I call genius. That's that thing that you do that you love. It creates amazing results. People marvel when you do it. But those things stack. And I think that's what a lot of people, they just want to skip ahead to the top of the pyramid and say, hey, we're doing lots of great projects. But those ingredients actually stack and they build on one another like a foundation of a house. And without them, you can realize some success. But after a few years, you start to have this nagging sense of, I think there's more. I think I'm missing out. Or you're just burnt out. You're underpaid. You're underappreciated. It comes out in a variety of ways.
So Ben, I have to say here, one of my favorite things of working with Joel is that he he was a business owner for 20 years. And he knows, the way he describes what's needed or the challenges or the myths behind a business, the reality is he actually lived them out. He knows the lies that he told himself. And he's had to come to kind of the realization of what really makes someone successful. And I was going to say one of my favorite parts about working with Joel is that he remembers those moments of revelation. So he remembers each one of these myths that he's talking about. He can recall when he realized that, it's all about the work was his first thought. And then he started realizing, wow, it's not just about the work. The reality is about the genius behind us. And when we position ourselves well, we will find the right kind of client for us instead of having us run out and try to find clients just to kind of fill the pipeline.
You mentioned something interesting there about that transition between having great work and actually turning it into some sort of established business. You mentioned one of the key elements were finding better clients, but also kind of figuring out what you're expert at or like what differentiates you. And that's such like an obvious thing to ask somebody like, oh, what makes you different? I ask that question to my clients all the time. Whenever they come to me and they're like, oh, we want to do a video about X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, what are you guys about? What makes you different? But when I ask myself that, it is like the hardest question to answer. I almost feel like I need somebody else from the outside to answer that as I'm trying to figure out what is it that I feel like we excel in a lot of areas because I like the work and I think we're doing cool stuff. But where do we really excel? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like a lot of people probably are questioning that in themselves as well.
The hardest lies to overcome in life are the ones you're telling yourself. And
this is turning into a therapy session. I love it.
Well, it's the truth of just running a business, or especially in the creative world where you depend on your instincts so much, that these this revelation of who you really are and what you're capable of. I often find that people are more capable than they want to believe in themselves, or they have more opportunity than they're willing to position themselves. So they're very bold with their clients, but then when it comes to themselves, they're not very bold at all. And so I think you're right. Like that outsider's voice that believes in you, that understands what you're actually capable of, that can judge you in the marketplace and tell you what's actually possible. I think that's very helpful to find a mentor or to work alongside other entrepreneurs where you can have honest conversations is huge. It's really huge. And at RevThink, we've actually started to build up some of that community respect and community opportunities so people can have those honest conversations and see if they can overcome some of those items that hold them back.
Do you ever recommend people reach out to their clients, ones that they have a good relationship with, to find out, like, what do you think of us? Like, when you think of company X, what did we do well for you? How do you perceive us?
Yeah, and Joel can answer this, but I'll just say, Joel can answer this from personal experience. But I can say that you're not alone. And to think that you can't be vulnerable to your client or your competitors or in a marketplace is really foolish. It's in that vulnerability that you'll find a lot of growth and opportunity. So, for example, the terms you just use about finding clients, what we've come to realize is the best positioned agencies out there are positioned in such a way that the clients find them. And the clients are able to find them because they're out there talking, being honest, posting things and writing articles so that they're a clear voice in the marketplace. And then people will find you because you're positioning yourself in such a way that voice is something others want to work with. So that's clients or employees or partners or whoever else is in that marketplace.
So you're saying kind of developing yourself, marketing yourself in places where the customers you want are going to find you, and then in turn that should turn into getting calls from clients or getting inquiries from other clients versus cold calling, reaching out to people doing something like that.
It's funny how you ask that question because you say it should, and I'll say it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would also add that actually cold calling does have its place as well, because there's inbound sales, there's outbound sales, there's repeat business, right? Where did sales come from? But the foundation does come back to what is your genius? And clearly the most creative entrepreneurs, they're so close to it. You're so close to what it is that you are great at and what you love doing. You tend to take it for granted. And therefore you think, well, is this such a big deal? Is this so special? And so sometimes it's helpful for that knowledgeable outsider to come alongside you and say, hey, I see something here that perhaps you have forgotten, or something that you once knew, but you no longer see it because you just take it for granted. But the good news is there's actually like a process. There is I think this is something I studied now, I guess going on 20 years, of what does it take to position a creative firm in a way that it stands out, gets noticed, creates opportunities. And it's not just this willy-nilly, hope it all works out. There is, there are elements there. There are things that you can get in touch with to create solid positioning that will enable you to then, of course, do that outreach that we talked about and land better clients and so forth. So that's the good news. There actually is sort of a discipline and a process and a system to it.
Well, Ben, haven't you found this to be true yourself? You're a business owner, and then you do this podcast. Yeah. And in this podcast, I'm sure that there's a lot of opportunity for you for people to hear the person behind the brand. So that outreach or that recognition is really what's out there, right? Then the clients will find you because you're putting yourself out there in such a personal way.
I think what the podcast does is when people are deciding who they want to direct their commercial, their video, whatever, and they're starting to look up my name, I think I'm out there, I'm talking to people, I'm in the industry, and I think it just brings some legitimacy to me as a director, knowing that I am, a member of the community in a way where I'm kind of engaging with people and sharing my knowledge. I think that's helpful. I don't know so much if clients listen to the show and be like, because we talk about so many different things. It's not like I'm sitting here doing a show about directing commercials. It's a show about production and creativity in general. Right. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit vague. I'm not going out there. I was invited on some podcast development thing here in my town. And the guy that was running it he owns a cigar shop called Two Guys Smoke Shop. And cool. he has a podcast about cigars called The Cigar Authority. It's very directed. It's very targeted. It makes sense because he's selling a product and he's talking about that product. I'm selling productions, and I'm talking about the idea of creativity and the idea of video production and how I'm one person in a million of production people. And that's kind of what I'm doing. So it's not as targeted, but I do see a benefit.
Yeah, and I would argue that the benefit is adding just value to the marketplace.
Sure.
So at any point, a client or an employee or a competitor, whatever crowd you're running around with, says back to you, "Hey, I heard your podcast and I really liked that one with RevThink." Now you're adding value to the marketplace, which is you being a professional in that marketplace. So sure, you have a specialty within it, but the overall market that you're operating in or adding value to, that's the way we want our clients to think, or even anyone in our industry to think, is that to be a professional in this industry, you have to be thinking what value you provide, not just how creative you can be or the last work that you did. Because honestly, over time, it's hot and cold. You're only as good as your last work. But if you add value and continue to add value over the years, you'll have a full career and you can live this thing out and play it out in that way.
Plus, I think creative people are very emotional. You know what I mean? And it's like, I know that there are times where I look at my work and I hate everything. I'm like, everything stinks. And then there's times when I look at it and I'm like, you know what? That's actually pretty good. Or I feel really good about a new project. It's so up and down when I only focus on the work. And it's largely dependent on my mood at that moment. Or if I'm super annoyed with a particular client or project, I've just been looking at it for 3 weeks and I'm over it. When it's only about the work, sometimes I think you can get a little off track. So it's encouraging to hear you guys talk about that. One thing too, before we pass it, I wanted to go back to Joel, because a few minutes ago, Tim, you had mentioned that Joel may have some thoughts on the idea of reaching out to your clients to help you kind of figure out what areas you excel in. Is that something you had ever done, anything like that, Joel?
I did. And it's funny because I went through this exercise. I was actually the recipient of some entrepreneurial coaching at the time. And that was the advice that I received was, hey, ask your clients what makes you special or different or unique. And what I found was so interesting was, one, everyone that I was in a really good relationship with was happy to share their feedback. And Tim mentioned that word vulnerability a few minutes ago. I think there's actually a tremendous power in vulnerability and not having to always, be put on the appearances of strength and perfection and all this. But when you're vulnerable, your clients will tell you, yes. Now, you have to be careful, because I would say half the comments I received weren't very thoughtful. I mean, they were just sort of like, yeah, you're really good at animation and design. And I'm like, well, that's not what is my genius. But other people did say some things that were more thoughtful and more interesting that, pointed to something deeper. But here's the thing. I tell all of my students that I do this accelerator where we spend each week we go through a different topic. And when we get to the week, when we talk about positioning and they start doing the homework to fine tune the positioning of their creative firm, it's all fun and games until we get to that week, because once you start talking about positioning, I'm just telling you, everybody freaks out and says, oh my God, this is so hard and this is so difficult. And I just encourage everyone, here's the good news. Your positioning is never done. It's only better. So just keep at it. It's a journey. It's going to take years before you actually like your firm's positioning. And that's okay.
Why do you think it's hard for people?
Gosh, because it's if I was to just ask anybody on the planet, you have 20 seconds to tell the entire world who you are. Sum up who you are and what you're about in one sentence. Ready, go. And you stick a microphone in their face. You choke.
Yeah.
You're paralyzed because you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's 1,000 different things I could say. And so the process is actually getting clear about all of the things that you wouldn't say in order to find the one thing that you would say. And that it's just a very long, a lot of soul searching to kind of arrive at that thing that is the core and the essence of, your genius and where that intersects with opportunities in the marketplace.
By the way, you just gave me a new opening question for every interview. 20 seconds. Who are you? Go.
Right. What's the meaning of life and what's your place in it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just throw in there too. I think that's my favorite week in the Jumpstart Accelerator. Every once in a while, I'll join Joel for his weekly Q&A. And when that week is happening and he's throwing people's website up in this live broadcast within the small group and going through each person's positioning, you can just tell that the other side of it, they're just cringing. They're afraid of what Joel's going to say about their website. They often apologize before they put it up there. It's just such a great moment of revelation for them to be critiqued in an honest way, because too many people just say the exact same thing on their website. We are a motion design live action production company with a 3D model of 360 degrees of production and they just go on and on and on with a resume, and they never describe who they actually are. So to have a coach come alongside and really help you create a unique voice in the marketplace, so that when people are looking for you, they can find you. It's just such a great week. It's such a kind of a great moment for everyone to walk through.
What is this? Yeah, what is this? If people want to what is this called? This week that you're talking about?
Well, it's a week in an accelerator. So it's a 10-week class in effect that I do several times a year called Jumpstart, and I think it's week 3, if I'm not mistaken, or week 4. I'm just about to go into it here in a couple of weeks. Is when we talk about positioning and we talk about the 3 Ps of positioning and how to carve out your positioning. But yeah, it's a course that basically I deliver for small and growing studios, which is different than what I would call our typical RevThink clients, which are really larger, more established creative firms.
I love that. That's like the perfect like level of embarrassment. It's great. It reminds me of like acting classes in high school, like when they just like ripped you apart almost. But you need it. You need to feel that awful, terrible embarrassment to get out of it. I think I love stuff like that.
Well, it is. There's a moment I think, and Tim, you used the word professional earlier. I think it's that moment. Like I know when I was in college at Georgia Tech in the College of Architecture, and as a freshman, you learned how to not only, of course, create things, but stand up in front of your peers and present your work and be judged by not only your peers but the other professors. And those were critique sessions, right? That is one of your first steps towards becoming a professional. Is can you take the heat? And once you start to realize, I suck. You start realizing, I suck, and that's okay because it's not about how good you are, right? It's how good you want to be. And if your desire and your access to knowledge and other teachers and mentors and so forth, if those come together, the results are really incredibly powerful. And after all, I mean, having a crappy website, a crappy positioning, sure, it's embarrassing to go through my roast. But if at the end of the day, if it's something that helps you move forward and drive your business forward, I think we can all get over it. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely see the value in that. I want to give you another scenario. Okay. We talked about the individual, creative person that wants to branch out, turn it into a business. Next step from there. What is your recommendation for the person who has done a great job developing a list of clients and is at that point where there's too much work for you, but not enough work to hire a staff? And you don't really know how to make that jump. You're kind of at the crossroads where it's like, am I just going to become the best cinematographer I can and forget about turning it into a creative shop and start turning clients down? Or am I going to hire people, take a hit for a little while and try to build this thing? That, I think, is a crossroads that a lot of people, certainly in our audience, may be thinking about and may be in right now.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really a great question because if anything we've done in this podcast here, I think has perhaps put the fear of God in some of those people who are like, oh, maybe I don't want to start a business. And I don't want to discourage anyone from taking that path. I mean, I lived it. And I could say misery loves company, but I won't go there. I think
this podcast is supposed to encourage people, not have them drop out of the business.
No, we are encouraged.
I love this.
Here's what I know. There are people that really just want to do the craft. And I will say this, running a business is not a means to an end called, I want to focus on my craft. It's really not. And I think that's something I can say candidly. However, if your mission, if your vision is, I actually want to have an impact. I want to have influence in the world. I want my work to matter. I want to solve bigger problems. I can just tell you that, sure, clients will never hand a 6-figure budget, or at least regularly, to a solopreneur. They're just not going to work, the bigger problems, the more interesting challenges, launching big initiatives and so forth by creating content. They go to businesses because businesses are it's a group of people who come together to fulfill a promise called, we can solve this, we can deliver, we can create something amazing. So if that's what inspires you, then absolutely go for it. And I think one thing you might study is something we publish that's called Seasons of the Creative Firm. And what it does is, this is just a simple diagram that Tim and I invented a few years ago, which helps people understand, what a company starts and then it goes here and then it evolves and grows to become this. And then it goes to this season and this season. And once we have the benefit of having worked with so many companies that we're seeing these patterns and recognizing, hey, here are the pros and cons of these different seasons. So before you jump into what I call the painful season, which is when you start, just understand what the trade-offs are. What are the pros and cons? And then if you want to grow into the push season, the punch season. These are these different stages of the life of a creative business. Just understand before you just plow recklessly into the future, understand those trade-offs and think about what is it that you're really after. What is it you desire the most, and go create that future. And maybe when you get to the season where you're ideally suited, stay there. Don't keep growing. Don't keep increasing in size and clients and budgets and those kinds of things. Maybe you're happiest in that season.
Yeah, and I'll add this to what Joel's saying. If you want to be innovative and you want to have impact, we want to work with you. That's what we're fans of. We don't just come alongside companies and choose our clients that have the highest revenue or looking to gain the most kind of impact by gross receipts. What we're looking for are those people who have original thoughts and understand that there's innovation and opportunity in this marketplace. We want to be part of that process, and we want to come alongside you and support you. We might need to be coached ourselves in what you're trying to accomplish, and we want to be that person. We can help you in finding investments, investors. We can help you in organizing employees. We can even just help you be a sounding board for your thoughts. But that's the work we're interested in being part of. That's how we know these seasons, in that we can hear in people's voice and their story just what they're processing and what their goals are. And then we recognize when the entrepreneur wants to step up and do something new and unique and cutting edge and take on the challenges that this industry is throwing at us. It seems every other year there's a new innovation and change that creates a new challenge. We want to be part of that. That's what we have loved since the 90s and have seen happen and evolve over time. And that's the part of this industry we really love.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Tourists by Harrison Amer. PremiumBeat.com is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. They've got a great website where you can access their collection of thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $49 each. $49! And it's not just the individual song. No. You get loops. You get cut downs. So when you get a song from PremiumBeat.com, you have all the tools you need to customize the track to fit your video perfectly. So head over there, PremiumBeat.com. Check out the music. Download some stuff. You will be so happy that you did. PremiumBeat.com. And lastly, let's talk about Shutterstock.com. Shutterstock.com has over 8 million royalty-free video clips, many of which are in 4K. Over 80,000 clips added just this week. It's bananas. But really, who cares if there's 80 billion clips? Who cares? The most important thing is it's the clip you're looking for and the clip that works best for you. And you're going to find that at Shutterstock.com. Go to Shutterstock.com, click on footage, which I do all the time. Of course, they have music and images and all that stuff too. But we're talking about footage here, because I'm often looking for stock footage clip to throw into my productions. And I want to make sure that what I put in there is of the same quality or better than what we shot ourselves here at BC Media Productions. And I find it every time at Shutterstock.com. They have simple pricing, so it's easy to budget for your clients. You can save hundreds of dollars by buying video packs, which is basically like pre-buying downloads. And it's all there at Shutterstock.com/video. They also have these really great collections too. So if you don't necessarily want to just type in the search bar, you want to look by category in these collections, you can find such great stuff because they do an excellent job of curating their clips to fit the categories perfectly. I love what they do over there. I sometimes even just go for inspiration when I just need to see some visuals to help me build a director pitch or something like that. So I go there for a lot of different reasons. And I suggest you do too, Shutterstock.com. So much more to listen to with the guys from RevThink. It's not over yet, people, and the best stuff is here. We saved the best for last, and it's coming up right now. I want to talk about some more logistical things.
Sure.
And maybe logistical isn't even the right word, but I'm thinking, okay, you've decided that you do want to start a business. You want to start hiring people. Who is the best first hire for a new production company?
Well, who are you?
for a creative.
Okay,
So
for creative.
A creative, a writer, a camera person, a director, a producer maybe. Does it make sense to hire other creatives, or does it make sense to have things like, sales, marketing, bookkeeping, an accountant? Does it make sense to have those types of things first?
I would say I'd stack it like this. If you're a creative, the next greatest person you can add is the producer. Or if you're a producer, you for sure need to add a creative, because those two sides of the production process are an absolute necessity to get the job done. And if you can't get the work accomplished, it doesn't really matter what you want to do with your business.
Yeah.
So those two start creating new problems to solve. Those two start finding opportunities. And then the way we like to explain it is that's the needs plus the resources that equals the solution. So once the two forces of production and creative start working together, we want them to go find the problems that need to be solved. And then based on those problems, if it was something technical, we'd want them to add a technical person. If it was a really, really large pile of cash, you'd want to hire a finance person. But most often you start adding to your creative team over time before you evolve into something more kind of foundational like finance and operations. Those usually come last because you can often outsource to a bookkeeper, outsource to your CPA. Once you hit a certain dollar amount or hit a certain number of projects, it's really those operational needs and operational infrastructure needs to be put in place.
Yeah, I was going to add, Ben, that there's sort of the question, what should you do? And then what do most people actually do? Because what typically happens is there's a creative or two that will start a business. They realize some success. And of course, as the work comes in, they hire other artists. Those might be animators. Those could be editors. And it's not that it's bad, right? It's just, there's perhaps a better way. When I generally start working with a small company that's maybe in my Accelerator, I'm usually telling them, we really need to hire a producer here, because in order for you to reach that next level, we need you to get out of the way. We need the work to be much more efficient. We need communication to be streamlined. And of course, we need somebody who has their genius is managing clients, the communication, budgets, schedules, resourcing, all that. And that hire, kind of to what Tim was saying, is such a crucial addition to the team, because you suddenly realize efficiency, you start generating repeat business, you find money just that you were leaving on the table in all sorts of other places, and it really catapults you to that next level. So that's why I am a huge fan of, whether you call it project manager, producer, coordinator, that role is so fundamental. And then, of course, the third leg, I would say, of the stool is generally sales. And sometimes that's most often one of the partners that has that gift. But those are, I think, sort of the three most fundamental legs of the stool would be the work, production, and sales.
Do you think finding an outside salesperson, lead generator, a new business person is the way to go? Or should it be somebody from within the company?
Within. Yeah, within. We have really strong opinions about this because we get asked that question all the time. And one of the things that I think we find very often when we're working with more established firms is very often we come in and we see an opportunity called, this person is really not appropriate for sales. Reps maybe are not appropriate in this situation. Let's build somebody inside to be sales and to take on that responsibility. And I think that that's really where the mixture of motivations and incentives and opportunities really find their pinnacle, I think, in having an internal salesperson. And sometimes it's just one of the partners that we just have to identify and say, look, dude, I just got to level with you. You are awesome at sales. You just need to step up and own it and go with it, run with it, like play to your strengths and let everyone else benefit here as a team. And so sometimes it's giving the owner permission to do what he or she kind of senses that he or she should be doing. And that's part of the role that we can play.
And of course, that's an ideal answer. In practicality, an outsourced salesperson is sometimes necessary. We just don't favor that. We find that an outsourced salesperson, I'll call it the coattail model, that you're riding the coattails of their success. But in reality, in the long term, and what you need to develop as an owner is your strongest sales tool. And your strongest sales tool is belief. And you can't outsource belief. Somebody has to believe in you. You want somebody that understands you, that talks about your genius, that has come alongside you in projects or understands the obstacles you've overcome for other clients. That's your best sales technique. And so someone has to kind of live alongside you in that process. And that's why we often like to grow them from the inside out, is that internal experience really is such a huge benefit when it comes to the sales and sales process.
And the last thing I wanted to bring up with you guys is this idea of marketing and communicating your message to audiences, not audiences, to potential customers. Let's say you said you have your creative, you have your marketing, you have your sales. I think the people in this audience are certainly handling the creative part. That's what they do. I think a portion of them are probably really good at sales too, because they're passionate about their work, but simply don't have the time to pursue new clients because they're working with existing clients. And sure. I think that's a problem that I can see happening. For those people that only have two of the three legs, we'll say, they've got the creative, they have the sales, or they have the creative, they have the marketing. They've developed a good social media presence, something like that. I guess, what is that turning point for somebody when they decide, I'm now going to focus on sales and I'm going to leave the work to somebody else, meaning I'm no longer doing it or I'm doing less of it? That, I think, is a really scary thing for creatives. But it's also something that you may need to do in order to grow. And that seems to be a crossroad and a roadblock for people.
Yeah. And one thing we should call out, right, is that marketing is actually very different than sales. And of course, Tim and I joke.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I think that's a good thing.
We joke because we often say we know marketing and sales are different because they're spelled differently. The truth is, marketing really are those things, those activities, those items that allow sales to do its work. So if marketing wasn't in place, sales wouldn't have anything to talk about. Sales wouldn't have anything to show. Sales wouldn't be able to start a conversation. So marketing is things like your website, but it's press releases, it's you speaking at a conference. It's all those things that move people from unaware to aware and then to interest. Okay, so these are the first steps in the creative firm sales cycle. But I think to answer your question, the moment of perhaps when someone makes the shift to, okay, I do really want to grow, I do want to pursue better clients with great projects, I think it's a step. I don't think of it as like an incremental, I'm just going to do a few more tweets each week. It's not that sort of a piecemeal approach. It's really most often a strategic decision called, okay, what does the next level look like? We have this sense called, we can land these types of clients who have these kinds of projects. So therefore, there's actually a coordinated effort called, I'm going to focus on sales. We're going to bring in a young person to handle marketing for us. So this is marketing automation and email blasts and website and all that exposure stuff. And then while we do that, you are going to focus on production. And so it's really everyone getting more and more focused, but it's usually a coordinated step up where you're saying, for us to go from 500,000 to 1 million, or from 1 million to 2 million, there's actually these 3 or 4 pieces that have to come together simultaneously, and we're going to make this step up. And once you make those investments, you have enough runway so you can say, all right, it's going to take 90 or 180 days. We're going to go for it. And then you see if it proves out. This is the risk that we all take as creative entrepreneurs. But as it plays out, then of course you quickly get feedback from the market and you say, hey, this is working, but let's continue to tweak it. But that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, it's really, we like to use the term turning professional in such a way that as an owner of a company, there's just a moment that if you tried the same effort you applied over and over again, that it was just you're going to get no better results, and you want to try something new. That's the moment you want to turn professional. And then you start asking brand new questions and finding new opportunities. And one of our first places that we point people to is marketing, because often their sales process is fine. It's their marketing that they've been leaving behind. Most likely because marketing has a longer runway. It plays out over a longer period of time, and it takes some true investing in it. So you're going to have to lean in and start thinking about what it would take to make your marketing stronger, and then just step up into that professional world and do this for a living. Be a business owner for a living, put your company out there, talk about it in a positive way, promote yourself, and do the work it takes to be a professional in this marketplace.
Speed round. You guys ready for the last few minutes?
Do we just trade off between Joel and I on the speed round?
I know, right? Just a couple lingering questions that I think would be helpful. This one is kind of a big question, but it doesn't need to be answered with, it's spent forever. I'm just curious what your initial thoughts are. I think the word producer is probably the most overused and understood. What the hell? What is a producer? Because I have producers that work with me, and each one do different things. And sometimes I'm a producer and I do different things. And, some deal with budget, some don't. Some, it's all over the place. Sure. And when you were saying as a creative, look for a producer, what responsibilities are you thinking that person should do?
Sure, I have a good answer for this, because a good friend of mine one day told me that when he got in this industry, he looked up 2 definitions: the definition of director and the definition of producer. And the director is the person that directs, so points in the direction that you want to go. The producer is the person that makes the product. That's why the best picture is handed to the producer, because the overall product is in the hands of a producer, when the direction, the vision, the concept, the idea is coming from the director. So really, the way I think of it is the director has the vision and the producer has the ability. And the two together make a great project.
Now, here's my, my speed round answer would be: a producer is someone who anticipates, they're an intermediary, and they practice the art of diplomacy.
All right. I like it.
Which is the practice of telling somebody to go to hell in such a way they're looking forward to the trip.
I love that. A couple just legal questions, and not, you certainly don't have to be lawyers to answer it, but I think some of the pain points for people are writing proposals, contracts, bookkeeping and invoices, tax preparation. Do you have any tools or online resources that people should utilize to help in these areas?
Not really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes and no.
Yeah,
no, go ahead, Tim. You answer this one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how we both answered opposite, because what you need to, each person has their own kind of needs. And it's almost like saying, is there one grocery list for everybody as they go to Whole Foods?
Yeah.
And it's not true. Each person has to kind of grab their own and do it their own way. But when it comes to, let's say, the foundational pieces, like the contract writing, filing taxes, doing the weekly bookkeeping, that kind of work, we definitely have the overall coaching and vision of what needs to be put in place. So you put the right routines in place, and then you can hire your own accountant, bookkeeper, financial planner, whatever that is, to get some of that stuff done. When it comes to contracts, it's very different. Contracts are actually becoming a more global issue because of the larger conglomerates involved in this industry. So there are these huge master service agreements that are dictating terms almost globally for our industry. So we're actually dealing with contracts in a different way, putting groups of people together, and even speaking of trying to put a co-op or an association together to help understand some of these contracts and give people advice in that way. So there's kind of different needs and different routines necessary for each of those fields that people need that support in.
Are there places to go to find like well-crafted template production contracts? Is that a thing?
Gosh.
I mean, I would start with the AICP. I think, the Association of Independent Commercial Producers is a strong resource that has built a body of guidelines. They've created guidelines that I think have been a great help to production companies in the advertising agency space. But a lot of those guidelines, people adopt them as sort of their standards when they work elsewhere. I think that's a great place to start. And then, the whole area you're talking about, legal and finance and taxes and, HR, that's operations. It's one of those ingredients that companies start to master when they're crossing over into this, what we call the power season, which is maybe $10 million. So if you're not there, I would just look for flexible and affordable resources that you can engage, part-time, contract, that sort of a thing. Everyone needs a good attorney, a good banker, a good CPA, and a great bookkeeper, of course. Please get a good bookkeeper.
And I think our Facebook group, our 7 Ingredients Facebook group, is a great place to ask other business owners exactly kind of those referrals. The 7 Ingredients Facebook group is only for business owners, and it's a private group held within Facebook. And there's a lot of exchange and questions and conversations taking place in there. Joel and I even will do live Q&As over video where people can throw questions at us and join us in the questions and answers, and we can hit all the hot topics. And often some of the items that are exchanged are things about contracts or finances or changes to contracts with freelancers or specific clients that the industry is facing. And the business owners are finding it helpful to have that conversation and exchange best practices with one another.
Perfect. Guys, I can't thank you enough for being on and sharing this information. This is great. Where can people go to find more about you and, check out your services and probably hire you to help them?
Yeah, sure. The best place is RevThink.com. Just go to our website. We do have a blog there that's called RevThinking that I think people will find really helpful, lots of insights and tips. And then we also have accelerators, which are these programs we do, and conferences. We're getting much more involved in being out in the world and leading conferences. So people can check out those resources. And we do have a RevThinking podcast even that Tim and I host. And then that last thing that Tim mentioned, the 7 ingredients. If you go search the number 7 ingredients on Facebook, if you're an owner of a studio or a production company, we invite everyone to join. It's free and it's a great resource.
I just joined it this morning. I was looking at all the stuff that you guys did. Yeah, I'm excited to dig in and see what sort of information is on there. RevThink, RevThink.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, obviously. But thanks, guys, so much for being on. This is a huge, huge help for me, certainly, and I'm sure our audience, too. So we very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet it. Ben, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us on.
I want to thank Tim Thompson and Joel Pilger from RevThink for coming on and sharing this information and sharing the information for free, you guys. I mean, people pay them. People pay them a lot for this information, and you got it for free. So we really thank them for all their help. So please support them. Go to their websites, check them out, take their seminars, learn from them. That's what they're there to do. And they have such a passion for helping our production community, and that's why we love them. You know who else I love? Matt Russell. Because he mixes, he masters, and he makes the show sound so good. If you want him to mix and master your stuff, you can hire him. He's at gainstructure.com, gainstructure.com, and on Twitter, @gainstructure. While you're on Twitter, tweet us at Go Creative Show, at Go Creative Show. Let us know what you think of the show. Guest suggestions, we take them. Of course, I want to thank our sponsors, Hedge.video, Rule Boston Camera, Newsshooter.com, Shutterstock, Premium Beat. Without these people, the show wouldn't exist. So support those that support us. See you next time.